My name is Patricia Sennett, and at 71, I have learned one thing for certain. The quietest woman in the room is usually the one holding the keys. My son was getting married. I was happy until I overheard his fiancée tell the wedding planner exactly where I belonged. "Don't seat his mother near the family," she said. "She's not really part of this." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I picked up my handbag, walked past a brass plaque on the wall, and made one phone call. By Monday, the venue was gone. For a week, they blamed the calendar, the weather, plain bad luck. They never once asked whose name was on that plaque or what I would do next. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, where the women who get overlooked turn out to be the ones holding everything together. If you've ever been made invisible by the people you'd give anything for, this one is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I live in a gray house at the end of Linden Road. Same house for 40 years. The rooms are quiet now, quieter than I ever planned for. My husband Walter passed 14 months ago. He taught high school history for 31 years, and he was the only person who ever really saw me. I still set out 2 teacups some mornings. Old habits don't ask permission. I wear cardigans with worn elbows. I drive a Buick that turned 14 this spring. People look at me and see a tired old woman who probably knits. I let them. The phone rang on a Tuesday. It was Daniel, my son, talking fast the way he does when he's nervous and pretending not to be. "Mom, I asked Brooke to marry me," he said. "She said yes." My hand went to the counter. I steadied myself on it. "Daniel," I said, "that's wonderful." I meant it. God help me, I meant every word. I had waited years to hear him sound that happy. He talked about dates and venues. I half listened, smiling at the wall. In my handbag by the door, a heavy ring of brass keys shifted and gave a small, familiar jingle. I had built something over the years, something Daniel never asked about. He assumed I'd retired to my garden and my crossword puzzles. I let him believe that too. What I'd built had a name. It had a front door. And before long, my son would stand inside it without ever knowing it was mine. The wedding became Brooke's project within a week. That was fine. A bride should have her day. But I noticed the pattern fast. I wasn't asked, I was informed. Daniel would call with updates already decided. The florist, the colors, the date in October. When I offered to help, he had a gentle answer ready every time. "Brooke's got it handled, Mom," he said. "Don't worry about a thing." I told myself that was love, a young man proud of his fiancée, letting her shine. I didn't need to run the wedding, I just wanted a chair at it. Then he told me the venue. "We booked Ashford Hall," he said. "Most exclusive place in the county." Brooke's thrilled. I set my tea down very carefully. The cup didn't make a sound. "Ashford Hall," I repeated. "You know it?" "I've heard the name," I said. That was true, in a manner of speaking. He kept talking, but I'd stopped hearing him. My mind had gone somewhere 37 years back, to mud and broken windows and a roof that let the rain straight through. "Mom, you still there?" "I'm here," I said. "It sounds beautiful, sweetheart." She had no idea why that name made my hands go still. Neither did Daniel. I wasn't ready to tell them, not yet. I hung up and I sat in the quiet for a long time, holding a cold cup of tea and a secret that was starting to feel very heavy. I met Brooke properly the following Sunday. Daniel brought her and her mother to my house for lunch. Brooke was lovely to look at. Polished, careful, expensive. Her eyes did a quick sweep when she stepped inside. My cardigan, my furniture, the Buick in the drive. I watched her file me away. Harmless, poor, old. Her mother, Diane, came in behind her like a woman entering a room beneath her. She wore pearls to a Sunday lunch. She mentioned the Callaways twice before the soup. "We're an old family," Diane said. "Roots in this county go back generations." "How nice," I said, and meant nothing by it. She asked what I used to do, the way you ask a question you've already answered for yourself. "Hospitality," I said. "Oh." A small sympathetic nod. "Housekeeping is honest work. My grandmother always said so." I let it sit. I found that silence costs nothing and reveals everything. Brooke and Diane traded a look I wasn't meant to catch. Then Brooke smiled and started talking about the seating chart. "We want it elegant," she said. "Everyone in their right place." Diane patted her daughter's hand. Real family sits up front, she said. That's just how it's done. The words landed light as a feather. Diane meant them as a rule, nothing more, a small law of the universe she expected everyone to obey. I filed it away the same way I'd been filed. I smiled, refilled the water glasses, and said the lunch looked wonderful. It wouldn't be the last time someone in that family decided where I belonged. The site visit was on a Thursday. We drove out together. Daniel, Brooke, Diane, and me in the back seat like luggage. Ashford Hall rose up at the end of a long drive, stone and ivy against the lake. 37 years had been kind to it. I'd made sure of that. The general manager met us at the door. Gregory has run that property for 19 years. He's a careful man with a good memory. Mrs. Sennett, he said warmly, always a pleasure to see you. Brooke beamed. See, even the staff are friendly here. She thought he was being kind to a little old lady. She didn't catch the way he stood a touch straighter when he said my name. Gregory glanced at me, a question in his eyes. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. He understood at once. We toured the ballroom. Somewhere along the way, I passed a sample table set for a tasting. A linen napkin had slumped over, half unfolded. My hands moved before my brain did. I picked it up, creased it twice, stood it back into a clean fold. 40 years of habit. You can take the woman out of the work, but not the work out of the woman. Brooke laughed. You can take the maid out of the motel, huh, Patricia? Diane chuckled into her glove. Daniel said nothing. I set the napkin down, square and perfect, and didn't answer. The fold held its shape. So did I. The others moved on toward the gardens. I lingered in the foyer. There's a brass plaque on the east wall, just past the staircase. People walk by it every day and never read a word. I stopped in front of it. I let my fingertips rest on the cool metal. I won't tell you yet what it says. Some things you have to earn. I only know that my eyes stung standing there. The lake light came through the tall windows and lay across the floor like it always had. I heard Walter's voice, the way you do when you've loved someone 30 years and lost them. We'll make it beautiful again, Pat, you'll see. He'd said that the first day. We'd stood in this exact spot, the two of us, looking up at a ceiling that wasn't there anymore. Patricia? Brooke's voice carried back from the hall. Keep up. We don't have all day. I took my hand off the plaque. Coming, I said. I'd stood in that exact spot 37 years ago, in mud up to my ankles, with a flashlight and a man who believed in me. There'd been no ceiling, no floor worth the name, and no money to speak of. There had only been the two of us, and a ruin and a plan. Brooke called again. I went to catch up, but I carried that plaque with me out the door, the way you carry a name you're not ready to say out loud. Before we left, I went looking for the powder room. The hallway behind the ballroom is long and tiled, and sound carries there. The planning office door stood open a few inches. I heard Brooke's voice inside, low and certain. Let's talk about the seating, she said. A second voice. The planner, younger, polite. Of course. Where would you like the groom's mother? There was a pause. I stopped walking. Don't seat his mother near the family, Brooke said. She's not really part of this. I stood very still in the hallway. Put her at the far table, Brooke went on. By 12 near the back. People will understand. The planner hesitated. Are you sure? She's the groom's. I'm sure, Brooke said. It's cleaner this way. And then I waited. I waited for my son's voice. Daniel was in that room. I'd watched him follow Brooke down the hall 5 minutes earlier. I waited for him to say, that's my mother. I waited for him to say, no, she sits with us. It never came. The silence behind that door told me more than Brooke's words ever could. My boy heard every syllable. And he said nothing at all. I didn't push the door open. I didn't make a scene. I am not a woman who makes scenes. I closed the door, softly, so it wouldn't click, and I stepped back into the tiled hall. Something in me went very, very calm, not angry, not broken. Calm in the way water goes still before it freezes. I had spent 14 months being invisible. I was about to find out what that was worth. I found Daniel and told him I'd wait in the car. He looked relieved. He didn't ask why. I walked out under the stone portico at the front of the hall. I'd chosen that stone myself 35 years ago from a quarry 2 counties over. Gray granite, flecked with white. It had cost more than my first car. I stopped and looked back through the tall glass doors. The brass plaque caught the afternoon light on the far wall. She's not really part of this. I turned the sentence over, slow and quiet, the way you test a tooth that started to ache. Then I'll make sure I'm not, I said, to no one, to the granite. I took my phone out of my handbag. My hands were steady. I scrolled to Gregory's number, one I'd had for 19 years and didn't call often. He picked up on the first ring. "The Senate Callaway file," I said. "Don't change a thing. Don't mention me to anyone. I'll be in to see it myself." "Of course, Mrs. Sennett," he said. He didn't ask why. That call lasted 30 seconds. It didn't decide anything yet. It only froze the board while I figured out my move. I slid the phone back into my bag next to the ring of brass keys. They shifted and jingled the way they always did. I smoothed my cardigan. I checked my reflection in the glass door. A plain woman, tired, easy to overlook. Good, let them keep overlooking. By the time I reached the Buick, the wheels were already turning. Not the car's. Mine. I drove home the long way, past the lake. That night, I made tea in Walter's old pot, the chipped brown one he refused to throw out. I sat at the kitchen table and let the house be quiet around me. I wasn't going to do anything rash. I've never been a rash woman. Rash women lose, patient women win, and they win late. I thought about Daniel as a boy. I thought about the years I'd worked 2 jobs so he'd never feel the lack of anything. I thought about how I'd kept the size of what I built away from him on purpose. I'd wanted him loved for himself, not for what his mother owned. Maybe that had been a mistake. Maybe I'd protected him so well that he forgot to protect me back. I went into Walter's study. His desk still smells like him. Cedar and old paper. In the bottom drawer, there's a box I hadn't opened since the funeral. I rested my hand on it. I didn't open it, not that night. Walter had a saying near the end. He'd take my hand and squeeze once. "Never explain, Pat, just be ready." I turned off the lamp and left the box where it was. There would be a right time to open it. I already knew that time was coming fast. And for the first time in 14 months, I slept the whole night through. The next 2 weeks taught me where I stood. The dress fitting came and went. I heard about it after. The florist appointment, the cake tasting, all handled, all closed before I knew they'd opened. Brooke sent a text with a little pink heart. "We've got it all covered. Save your energy." Save my energy, as if I were fragile, as if I might break. Diane called the far table the comfortable table. She said it twice, pleased with the phrase. "You'll be more comfortable back there, dear, away from the noise." Then the printed invitations arrived. I held mine under the kitchen light. Mother of the groom, Patrice Sennett. Not even Patricia. They'd gotten my name wrong on my own son's wedding invitation. I set it on the counter and looked at it a long while. Patrice. A woman who didn't quite exist. I almost laughed. Almost. There's a kind of insult so complete it loops back around to funny. But I didn't laugh. I folded the invitation in half and set it aside. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. Daniel's aunt. Walter's sister. The one good apple in a thin barrel. "Pat, I saw the seating chart. This isn't right. I'm so sorry." I read it twice. Carol saw it. Carol, who had no power and no stake, saw it clear as day. My own son didn't. Or wouldn't. I texted back 2 words. "I'm fine." Then I put the kettle on and started, quietly, to make up my mind. I asked Daniel to lunch, just the 2 of us. A diner we used to go to when he was small. I tried to say it gently. "Sweetheart, I feel a little pushed out of all this." He stirred his coffee and wouldn't look up. "Mom, come on, you hate big fancy things. You always have." "Do I? You complained through every school recital," he said, smiling, trying to make it light. "Brooke's just streamlining, keeping it simple for you." Simple. There was that word again, dressed up nice. Then he said the thing that told me where it really came from. "You remember the kids at Brighton Academy?" he said. "Calling you the motel lady? I hated that. I want this to be smooth." And there it was. My boy, 34 years old, still flinching at a name some rich children called me when he was 12. He'd spent his whole life trying to outrun where he came from. And somewhere in the running, he'd started to think where he came from was something to hide. That hurt worse than the seating chart. "Daniel," I said. My voice stayed even. "I don't hate fancy things. I hate being told I'm not allowed near them." He looked away. Out the window, at the parking lot, at anything but me. That was my answer. I paid for both our coffees, the way I always have, and I drove home knowing exactly what kind of fight I wasn't going to have. Diane invited me for coffee that Friday. I think she meant it as a favor. We sat in a cafe with too much brass and not enough light. She ordered for both of us without asking. "I wanted to give you some guidance, dear," she said. "Mother to mother." "How kind," I said. She had thoughts on my dress, something muted so you don't compete. She had thoughts on where I'd stand for photos, toward the edge, out of the main frame. "It's their day," she said. "We let the children shine." "Of course," I said, and sipped my tea. She talked about the Callaways then, generations in this county, a name that used to mean something. She talked about standards, about how nobody held to them anymore. Then she said more than she meant to. "We lost the house in '09, she said, eyes on her cup. "Brooke was 16, watched the bank take everything her father built." A tight little laugh. "She swore she'd never feel that small again. That's my girl. She knows how the world really works." The world, to Diane, was a ledger of appearances. Lose the ledger, lose yourself. So that was Brooke, a girl who'd seen the floor vanish at 16 and decided the only safe thing left was how things looked. "Not like the new money," Diane went on, lowering her voice. "These people who buy up old places, run them like motels, no sense of history." I held my cup with both hands and said nothing. She had no idea she was describing the woman across the table. "Real family sits up front, Patricia," she said again gently, like she was teaching me something. "You understand?" "I understand perfectly," I said, and I did. More than she knew. Diane talked about old money, like she still had some. I let her. The poorest people I've ever met were the ones who couldn't stop performing wealth they'd already lost. "I know some of you are talking to your screen right now. Patricia, say something." "I hear you." But I was raised to believe the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Stay with me. If this is hitting home, hit subscribe. There's a reason I stayed quiet. Gregory called me on Monday morning. He calls the first Monday of every month with the property numbers. "Good morning, Mrs. Sennett," he said. "Occupancy's strong. October's nearly full." We went through it the way we always do. Bookings, repairs, the new boiler in the east wing. Then he paused. "There's one on the books I wanted to flag," he said carefully. "The Sennett Callaway wedding, October 18th. That's your son's party, isn't it, ma'am?" I closed my eyes. "Yes, Gregory, it is." "I thought so. The deposit came in under the bride's name. I didn't want to assume." For 19 years, that man has called me ma'am and owner and Mrs. Sennett. He has signed his name beneath mine on every report. He has never once called me Patrice. My son had chosen to get married in my house. He'd walked its halls, admired its ceilings, booked its grandest room, and never once thought to ask who owned the place his mother used to do hospitality. And his bride wanted me at table 12, by the back, near the restrooms. "Gregory," I said, "don't do anything yet. I'll be in touch." "Of course, ma'am." I hung up and sat with it. She'd planned her perfect day down to the back table, inside a house with my name on the wall. That evening, I opened the box in Walter's study, the one I hadn't touched since the funeral. It's an old cedar box, really. Walter kept it in the bottom drawer. The wood still holds its smell after all these years. I lifted the lid. On top was a photograph, yellowed at the edges, dated June 1989 in Walter's blocky hand. I'm in it. 34 years old, hair tied back, standing in the middle of a wreck. Behind me you can see Ashford Hall, or what was left of it. Half the roof gone, windows like broken teeth, weeds coming up through the ballroom floor. I'm holding a metal bucket and grinning like a fool. I turned the photo over. Walter had written 4 words on the back. "The day we bought the ruin, W." Under the photo was the deed. My name on it, plain as day. Patricia Sennett, sole owner, recorded at the county office, summer of 1989. And beneath that, a letter, cream paper, formal type. The Hartfield Town Preservation Society, thanking me, by name, for saving a landmark the town had voted to demolish. I sat on the floor of my husband's study and held 37 years in my lap. We'd had nothing back then, a loan I shouldn't have qualified for, a building everyone called a tear down, and a stubbornness I'd inherited from a mother who scrubbed other people's floors. We rebuilt it room by room. Walter on weekends, me every single day. Brooke called it the venue. Diane called it a place run like a motel. I called it the first thing I ever pulled out of ruin, myself included. I put everything back in the cedar box, but I left the lid open. For 2 days, I thought about what I had and what I wanted to do with it. I want to be honest with you. I didn't want revenge. Now, revenge is loud and cheap, and it never sits right afterward. What I wanted was simpler. I wanted to stop pretending I was small. For 14 months, I'd let everyone decide I was a tired widow in a worn cardigan. I'd let Brooke seat me at the back. I'd let Diane teach me my place. I'd let my own son look away in a diner. She'd said I wasn't really part of this. Fine. She was the bride. It was her right to draw her circle wherever she liked. But the house wasn't hers. The house was mine. If I wasn't part of their family, then their family had no claim on the one thing I'd built with my own 2 hands. Then I'll make sure I'm not, I said again, alone in Walter's study. The words meant something different now. Now they had a deed behind them. I picked up the phone to call Gregory. Then I set it back down. There was one more thing I needed to confirm first. I wanted to know exactly how deep Brooke had dug before I decided how I'd answer. I made an appointment to visit the property. As the owner, the first time in over a year. I met Gregory in the management office the next morning. Quiet wing, back of the property, no bride in sight. We went through the file together. The bookings under Marlowe Hospitality, he said, standard contract. The bride signed and paid the deposit herself, $8,000, 20% of the $40,000 venue package, 140 guests, and the dates confirmed. October 18th, confirmed and held. I nodded slowly. Gregory, as the owner, what are my options on a held date? He didn't blink. Owner's prior hold clause, ma'am. You can reclaim any date for the property's own use. We refund the client in full. It's in every contract you've ever signed. Full refund. To the penny, no penalty to them. That mattered to me. I wasn't going to take $1 of that girl's money. This was never about money. Gregory hesitated, then added something. There's one more thing you should know, he said. The bride left instructions with the planner in writing. Go on. She asked that no one from the groom's family be allowed to change the seating arrangement. She named you specifically Mrs. Sennett. I let that settle. Brooke had built a wall, a written, formal wall, to keep me out of a single decision at a wedding held inside a house I owned outright. Just say the word, Gregory said quietly. Not yet, I said, but soon. I drove home past the lake again. The water was flat and gray and certain. Like me. That night, I made tea in Walter's brown pot and sat with the choice in front of me. I want you to understand something about me. I have spent my whole life carrying things quietly. I carried 2 jobs when Daniel was small. I carried a failing building until it stood. I carried a marriage through hard years and a husband through his last ones. And for 34 years, I carried my son. Paid for the school where they called me the motel lady. Paid for the college, the first apartment, the car. He never knew the half of it. I made sure of that. That's the thing about quiet carrying. The person you carry forgets there's weight at all. So I wasn't going to punish anyone. Punishment is for people who want to feel something. I was past wanting to feel things. I was only going to set down what I'd been holding, let them feel the actual size of it. I won't punish them, I said to the empty kitchen. I'll just stop carrying what they don't know I carry. The refund would be full. Every cent of the deposit back in Brooke's account. I'd take nothing. I'd only take back the floor under their feet. Tomorrow was Saturday. There was a final seating walkthrough planned at the hall. Brooke's idea, of course. I'd be there, and I knew exactly what I was going to say, and exactly what I wasn't. Saturday came bright and cold, the final walkthrough. Brooke had a clipboard and the planner at her elbow. Daniel trailed behind, hands in his pockets. Diane wore her pearls again. Brooke walked me to the seating chart pinned on an easel near the ballroom doors. So you can see where everyone is, she said brightly. She pointed to a small square in the far corner, table 12, tucked against the back wall beside a door marked Restrooms. That's you, she said. It's cozy back here, Patricia. Nice and quiet. Cozy, I repeated. You'll have Walter's cousins for company. She smiled. The older crowd. Diane nodded along, much more comfortable. The planner shifted, uncomfortable, and looked at her shoes. Then Brooke turned to the young woman and said it again, out loud, in front of me. "Just keep the groom's mother at 12, she said. "She's not really part of this side of the family. It'll flow better." The planner's pen hovered. She glanced at me, then at Daniel. Daniel studied the floor. There it was. The last line, stepped over in broad daylight, with my own son 3 feet away, saying nothing at all. I smiled. I have a very good smile when I need one. "It's lovely," I told the planner. "Thank you for all your hard work." Then I picked up my handbag, turned, and walked toward the foyer. The keys shifted inside my bag. They made their small, familiar sound. This time I was ready to use them. I walked into the foyer and stopped at the east wall, at the brass plaque. "This time I want you to read it with me. Ashford Hall, restored 1989 through the vision and generosity of Patricia Sennett." My name, etched in brass, polished by Gregory's staff every Sunday for 19 years. Hanging 6 feet from the door, my future daughter-in-law walked through to plan her perfect day. She'd passed it a dozen times. So had Diane. So had my son. Not one of them had ever looked up. I stood there in my worn cardigan in front of my own name, and I took out my phone. I scrolled to Gregory. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Sennett." "Gregory," I said. My voice was very calm, calmer than the lake. "The Sennett Calloway date, October 18th. "Yes, ma'am. I'm exercising the owner's hold. The property has prior use that day." A short pause. "Understood. Refund the deposit in full, every cent, effective Monday morning." "Consider it done, ma'am." He didn't ask why. He'd worked for me for 19 years. He knew that tone, the quiet one, the settled one. He'd heard it the day we beat the demolition order and the day Walter died. "Thank you, Gregory," I said. "Of course, Mrs. Sennett." A beat. "For what it's worth." "I'm glad you finally said it." I put the phone away. The plaque caught the light. My name held steady on the wall. It had been there the whole time. They'd just never looked up. So that was the call that ended it. The first one, weeks ago under the portico, only froze the board. This one knocked it over. No threats, no lawyers, no scene, just an owner reclaiming her own date, the way her own contracts allowed. Here's how it would go. On Monday morning, Marlowe Hospitality would send the couple a polite email. A scheduling conflict had arisen, a prior hold on the property. The October 18th date was, regrettably, no longer available. The full deposit, all $8,000, would be returned within 3 business days. Clean, legal, final, and entirely beautifully unexplained. I'm told the email is 2 short paragraphs. I helped write the template myself, years ago, for exactly these situations. I never imagined I'd use it on my own son's wedding. The staff wouldn't say more, because the staff didn't know more. To them, it was an owner's hold, routine as a boiler repair. Only Gregory knew, and Gregory has kept my secrets for 19 years. I drove home. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't text Brooke. I didn't send Diane a single word. That was the whole point. For months they'd talked over me, around me, about me. They'd decided I wasn't part of the conversation. So I left the conversation entirely. Silence, it turns out, is the loudest thing a quiet woman owns. I made the call on a Saturday afternoon. They would find out on Monday morning. In between, I had a weekend planned, a quiet one. Tea, the garden, the crossword. I intended to enjoy every minute of it. I spent Saturday in the garden. The asters were coming in. I cut a few for the kitchen table. Sunday I did the laundry, and when I came to the linen napkins, I folded each one into a clean, sharp square. 40 years of habit. Brooke had laughed at that habit and called me a maid. But there's a difference between serving because you must and tending because you care. She'd never learned it. I'd built a life on it. I set the folded napkins in the drawer and put the kettle on. Across town, I learned later, Brooke was having a wonderful weekend too. She'd posted photographs of Ashford Hall to all her friends. The stone, the lake, the ballroom with its restored ceiling. My ceiling. Our venue, she'd written. Can you believe this place? 40-some friends had liked it, commented, asked how on earth she'd booked somewhere so exclusive. She told them it was connections. She told them it was taste. She was, at that very moment, bragging to half the county about a building she was about to lose. She didn't know that yet. She had one more peaceful evening coming. So did I. The difference was, I knew why mine was peaceful. I poured the tea, sat by the window, and watched the light go down over a town that had never once guessed what I owned in it. Monday morning, the email went out at 9 o'clock sharp. I know because I asked Gregory to copy me. I read it with my coffee. 2 paragraphs, a scheduling conflict, a prior hold on the property, the October 18th date no longer available. Full refund to follow within 3 business days. The hall's sincere regrets. By 9:15, Brooke was on the phone to the venue. The front desk was very sorry and could not explain. The booking office was very sorry and could not explain. The planner had no idea. She'd been cut out too. By 10, Brooke had called 4 times. Gregory took none of them personally. There was nothing to say that anyone was allowed to say. "Could we move to another date?" she finally asked. "Of course," the booking office told her. "Our next available Saturday is in 14 months." 14 months. The October wedding, the invitations, the dress, the cake, the 140 guests, gone in a single morning. I sipped my coffee and let it be. By noon, the theories had started. A computer glitch, Brooke decided. Then maybe the weather, a storm warning, some insurance thing. By that evening, she and Diane were blaming each other. Then they were blaming the venue. Then they were blaming, of all people, Aunt Carol. They blamed everyone in the county, everyone except the woman they'd seated at table 12. Here's the part I love. Not one of them asked the simplest question. Who owns the building? They were so busy deciding who counted as family, they never checked who held the deed. If you've ever been underestimated, you know this feeling. Subscribe. The dinner is coming. Daniel called me Monday night. His voice was tight. "Mom, the venue fell through, the whole thing. It's a disaster." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, "I'm so sorry. What happened?" "Nobody knows. They won't explain. Brooke's a complete wreck." I let him talk. I made the right sounds. I'm good at the right sounds. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. "No, just pray for a miracle, I guess." A miracle. I almost smiled. I'd already supplied the opposite. Then he said the part that troubled me. "Brooke thinks somebody did this on purpose," he said. "She thinks someone called the venue, sabotaged us." "Why would anyone do that?" That's what I said, but she's convinced. And she thinks it was Aunt Carol. Carol? The one person who'd texted me the truth, the one decent voice in that whole mess. I sat up straighter at the kitchen table. I had been willing to let this play out quietly, let them puzzle over a scheduling conflict forever. But I would not sit by and watch them pin it on Carol. "Daniel," I said gently, "maybe everyone should sit down together, talk it through, calmly. Brooke wants exactly that, a family meeting, to find out who did this. Then have it here," I said. "At my house, Wednesday. I'll cook." He sounded relieved. "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course," I said. "We're family, aren't we?" I hung up and set the table in my mind. 8 chairs. I knew who'd be sitting in every one. Wednesday, I cooked all afternoon. A roast, potatoes, the green beans Daniel loved as a boy. I cleaned the house until it shone. Not for them, for me. On the shelf by the dining room, where I keep Walter's photograph, I set down the heavy ring of brass keys. Right out in the open, the keys to every door at Ashford Hall. No one would notice them. People never notice the things that matter most. I'd learned that the hard way. In the sideboard drawer beside the good silverware, I laid 2 pieces of paper. The deed, with my name on it. The letter from the Preservation Society. I didn't plan a speech. Quiet people don't need speeches. We need 1 or 2 true sentences, said at the right time. Then I set the table for 8. Daniel and Brooke. Diane and her husband, Carol. 2 of Walter's cousins. And me, at the head, in my own dining room, where no one had ever told me to sit at the back. I folded every napkin myself. Sharp, clean squares, the way I always do. Old habits. They were about to become very relevant. By 6 o'clock, the roast was resting and the table was laid. I changed into a plain navy dress and put on Walter's wristwatch, the only jewelry I own that means anything. The doorbell rang at 6:30. I smoothed my dress, took one slow breath, and went to let my family in. Dinner started civil enough. It always does. We passed the potatoes. Diane complimented the china. Old Wedgwood, Walter's mother's. Carol sat quiet at the end, shoulders tight. Then Brooke set down her fork. "I think we should talk about what happened," she said, "while we're all here." "Of course, dear," I said, and refilled her water. "Someone sabotaged my wedding." Her voice rose. "Somebody called that venue and got our date canceled. People don't just lose a booking like that." "That's a serious thing to say," I said mildly. "It's a serious thing that happened." She looked around the table. "Someone in this family did this, on purpose." Diane laid a hand on her daughter's arm. "Tell them what you think, sweetheart." Brooke's eyes settled on Carol. "You never wanted me in this family," Brooke said. "You texted Patricia behind my back. Don't think I don't know." Carol went pale. "I never called anyone. I would never—" "Then who did?" Brooke snapped. Daniel finally spoke, miserable. "Brooke, please. Not here." "No, Daniel. I want answers. Tonight." The table had gone silent, forks down, everyone watching. I sat at the head, hands folded, and said nothing at all. Then Brooke turned to me. Sweet again, suddenly. Too sweet. "Patricia," she said, "you were the last one of us at the venue on Saturday. You walked off by yourself, remember?" "I remember." "So," she smiled, "did you see anything?" I looked at her for a long moment. "As a matter of fact," I said, "I did." I set down my spoon. Carefully, it didn't make a sound against the china. "Before I answer your question," I said, "let me ask you one." Brooke blinked. "Fine." "On Saturday at the venue, what did you tell the planner about where I should sit?" The room changed. You could feel it, the way you feel a door open in a far part of the house. Brooke's smile flickered. We were just organizing the tables." "You told her to put me at table 12, by the back, by the restrooms." My voice stayed even, pleasant even. "And you told her why?" "Patricia, you said I wasn't really part of this." I let the words sit in the air. "Do you remember?" Silence. Daniel had gone white. He set his fork down with a small, helpless click. He knew. He'd been standing right there in that office. He'd heard every word, and he'd said nothing. And now he understood that I'd heard it too. "Mom," he started. "Mom, In a moment, Daniel." Diane reached for her wine glass and drank. Brooke's face was doing something complicated. Fear and calculation chasing each other across it. I didn't mean," she said. "You meant it exactly," I said, still gentle. "And that's all right. You're the bride. You can seat your guests however you like." I folded my hands on the table. "But there's something about that house you should know." I stood up from the head of the table. I walked to the shelf by the photograph of Walter, and I picked up the ring of brass keys. They're heavy. They've always been heavy. I came back and set them down in the center of the table, on the white cloth between the roast and the candles. They landed with a single clear clink. "These open every door at Ashford Hall," I said. "They have for 37 years. No one moved." I went to the sideboard, took out the 2 papers, and laid them beside the keys. The deed. The letter. "That building was a ruin in 1989, I said. "The town had voted to tear it down. My husband and I bought it for almost nothing, and I spent the next 4 decades rebuilding it room by room." Brooke stared at the keys. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I own Ashford Hall." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I own the company that runs it. There's a brass plaque in the foyer with my name on it. You've walked past it a dozen times." The color drained from Diane's face. I looked at Brooke and I said it plainly. "You were right, dear. I'm not really part of this." A pause. "I own it." Brooke broke first. The tears came fast, the kind that arrive on cue. "How could you do this to me on my wedding? What kind of person—" "You canceled my own wedding," she cried, twisting it already. She spun toward Daniel. "Are you going to let her do this to us?" Diane stood, gripping the table. "This is extortion. You can't just— this is—" "I refunded every cent," I said. "I took nothing. I simply reclaimed my own house." I sat back down at the head of the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The keys had already said everything that needed saying. For a moment, no one spoke. Brooke's tears stopped being useful and just sat there, ignored. Then Daniel pushed back his chair. Everyone, he said. Stop, please. He looked at me. Really looked for the first time in months. Mom, he said. His voice cracked. I heard her at the venue, in the planning office. I heard her say it, that you weren't part of this, and I stood there. And I said nothing. The table was very quiet. I've been saying nothing my whole life, he said. Every time someone made you smaller, I just let it happen, because it was easier, because I was ashamed of where we came from. It was the most honest thing my son had said in years. I won't pretend it didn't move me, but I didn't reach for him, not yet. Some things you have to let sit. I know you heard Daniel, I said quietly. That's the part that broke me, not her words. I met his eyes. Your silence. He flinched. He had no answer. For once, neither did Brooke. I looked around the table, at Diane gripping her chair, at Brooke's ruined makeup, at Carol with tears in her eyes, at Walter's empty place I always sat. The motel lady, I said softly, built the most beautiful room you ever planned to stand in. No one said a word. The next morning, Brooke and Diane drove out to Ashford Hall one last time. There were a few deposit items to collect, a box of sample favors, some borrowed decor. Gregory met them at the door, as gracious as ever. I wasn't there. Gregory told me about it that evening. He walked them through the foyer toward the office, and Brooke, he said, stopped. She stopped at the east wall, at the brass plaque she'd walked past a dozen times without a glance. This time she read it. Ashford Hall, restored 1989 through the vision and generosity of Patricia Sennett. Gregory said she stood there a full minute, didn't speak. Just read it and read it again, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into someone else's name. Diane came up beside her. She read it too. Her hand went to her pearls. The woman they'd called the maid, the motel lady, the one who'd do hospitality, the one not really part of this. Her name, in brass, on the wall of the most exclusive venue in the county. Real family sits up front, Diane murmured. Gregory heard her say it. To herself, I think. The words had curdled into something else entirely. Brooke didn't cry this time. There was no audience worth crying for. She just looked up at my name finally, the way none of them ever had. It had been on that wall the whole time. They'd simply never looked up. The wedding never happened. They tried to find another venue, but October was gone, and the magic had gone with it. Within 3 weeks, Brooke gave the ring back. I think losing the house broke something she couldn't name. She'd built her whole self on appearances, and the grandest appearance of all had been pulled out from under her by the woman in the worn cardigan. She told her friends the wedding was postponed. Then she stopped telling them anything. I kept my word. The $8,000 went back, every cent, within 3 business days. I never touched it. This was never about money. Carol was cleared the moment those keys hit the table. She called me the next day, half laughing, half crying. Pat, she said, you magnificent, terrifying woman. We've had lunch every week since. Diane, I haven't heard from. I don't expect to. Daniel and I are slower. He calls now. Really calls. Not the rushed updates. We're seeing someone, the two of us, on Thursday afternoons. A counselor with kind eyes who lets the silences breathe. It isn't fixed. 34 years of looking away doesn't mend in a month. But he came to the house last Sunday and stayed 3 hours. He helped me in the garden. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. It's a start. Starts are all I've ever needed. Before he left that Sunday, I sat my son down at the kitchen table. I need to say one thing, I told him. Then we never have to say it again. He nodded. My door is always open to you. It always will be. You're my son, and I love you. Mom! Let me finish. I kept my voice gentle. But I will never again let anyone tell me I don't belong. Not Brooke, not Diane, not you, not near the people I love. He was quiet a long moment. You shouldn't have had to, he said. I'm sorry. I know. I walked him to the door. On the side table by the entry, I'd left a single linen napkin, folded into a clean, sharp square. I picked it up and pressed it into his hands. I'll always have a seat for you, Daniel, I said. I just won't sit at the back of my own life again. He held that folded napkin like it might break. Then he hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in 14 months. I learned something at 71. The people worth keeping are the ones who'll seat you up front long before they ever learn you hold the keys. That's my story. One overheard sentence, one quiet phone call, one name on a wall they never read. If anyone's ever told you that you weren't really part of something, let this be your sign. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.